Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper, beginning with a news item on page number 1 of the Delhi edition of The Hindu, relevant for GS paper 2. Supreme Court refuses to review verdict on protesters. Now let's understand this newspaper article in slight detail. To protest against the Citizenship Amendment Act and the proposed National Register of Citizens (NRC), the protesters at Shaheen Bagh in Delhi blocked roads as well, thereby inconveniencing the commuters. Matter went to the Supreme Court. The petitioner asked the court to order the clearance of Shaheen Bagh. But before the Supreme Court could rule over it, the COVID-19 pandemic hit the world. The protesters cleared Shaheen Bagh. But in October 2020, months after the protesters had vacated the Shaheen Bagh site, the Supreme Court gave its judgment. The Supreme Court said that public ways or public spaces, they cannot be occupied in such a manner, and that too indefinitely. The court said, yes, you have the right to protest and express dissent, but with an obligation towards the duties as well. Supreme Court said, yes, you have a fundamental right under Article 19(1)(a), which is freedom of speech and expression. You also have a fundamental right under Article 19(1)(b), which is to assemble peacefully without arms. But both these fundamental rights, they are not absolute. Both these fundamental rights come under reasonable restrictions. And one such reasonable restriction is public order. The Supreme Court said the right to peacefully protest against a law, that is your right. But the right of a protester has to be balanced with the right of the commuter as well. That means others should not be inconvenienced. This right of others not to be inconvenienced, this was also elevated to a status of fundamental right by the Supreme Court in October 2020. And this assumes significance considering the fact that we have farmers, particularly from Punjab, Haryana, and Western Uttar Pradesh, blocking important roads and highways. What Supreme Court said in October 2020, the Supreme Court said, yes, express dissent, but express dissent only in designated areas chosen by the administration. There were some who praised this judgment. There were others who were highly critical of this judgment. Some people said it is the fundamental rights which are fundamental. The restrictions on these fundamental rights, they are not fundamental. That means we have access to fundamental rights. We do not have access to fundamental restrictions. On top of that, some people said, if you have the right to protest only at designated areas, then what you are doing, you are compartmentalizing protest. Some people say that you need to inconvenience the government. Only then the government will listen to you. If, for example, you are protesting against an unjust order, against an unjust law, and then the authorities are telling you to protest at a designated place, but this designated area can be far off from the city, far off from the nerve center of that particular state. Then what you're doing, you are compartmentalizing protest, you're not inconveniencing the government, and ultimately nobody is going to hear the protesters. Against this order of October 2020, a review petition was filed, but this review petition has now been rejected by the Supreme Court. We need to understand that there are two grounds on the basis of which normally the review petition is accepted by the Supreme Court. One, if an error is pointed out, that means if somebody or a petitioner points out an error saying that, dear Supreme Court, the last time you gave this judgment, there is an error in your judgment. Or number two, new facts have emerged in this case. It's on these two grounds that the review petition is accepted by the Supreme Court. But in this case, the Supreme Court said neither has an error been pointed out nor new facts have emerged in this case. That is why we are rejecting this review petition. Right to protest is not unfettered, says the Supreme Court. That is what you need to understand from this newspaper article. Now let's look at another newspaper article on page number 8 of the Delhi edition of the Hindu, again relevant for GS paper 2. In the year 2004, the percentage of MPs with criminal cases pending against them, this percentage was 24. The year was 2009 and this percentage went up to 30. Then the year was 2014, this percentage went up to 34. And in the year 2019, there are 43% of our parliamentarians who have serious criminal charges against them. They have not been convicted, but the criminal charges against them are very serious. Rape, murder, so on and so forth. The year was 2011. A petition was filed in the Supreme Court. Public Interest Foundation versus Union of India. In this case, the Public Interest Foundation is asking the Supreme Court, dear Supreme Court, please do one thing. Don't allow politicians with criminal cases pending against them from contesting the elections. That means, yes, if you are convicted and you are inside jail, you cannot contest elections. That we know. Even if you are convicted and then you are released from the jail, even then you cannot contest elections for 6 years. That means you are disqualified from contesting elections for a period of 6 years after your release. That is why Sasikala, who was released from the Karnataka jail, a close friend of J. Jayalalitha, she could not contest elections for 6 years because she was convicted by the court of law. She spent time in the prison. Once she is released, she cannot contest elections for a period of 6 years. She is disqualified. The petitioner argued that forget about those who have been convicted. Let's focus on those against whom serious charges have been filed, against whom serious charges are pending, against whom cases are pending in the courts of the law. Please do not allow them to contest elections. The year was 2018. The Supreme Court said, no, we can't do that. We can't stop somebody from contesting the elections despite the fact that there are serious criminal charges against them. But what we can do, we can ask the political parties, please publish details of all their criminal cases. Publish these details, but where? On their websites as well as electronic media, so that people are made aware that these are the individuals against whom serious criminal charges are pending, but these are your candidates. If you want, please vote for them. This was 2018. Then in 2020, what happened? A contempt petition was filed in the Supreme Court. Why? One lawyer, one petitioner approached the Supreme Court and said, dear Supreme Court, this 2018 verdict, judgment is not being respected, is not being followed by political parties. In 2018, the Supreme Court asked these political parties, please furnish the details, publish the criminal details of your candidates against whom criminal cases have been filed. Please publish these details on your websites as well as electronic media. Since these guidelines have not been followed, contempt petition was filed in the Supreme Court. And Supreme Court in 2020, based on this contempt petition, what it did, it issued an order in February 2020. What Supreme Court said? Supreme Court ordered all political parties, their political parties, publish the entire criminal history of your candidates, along with the reasons. The political parties asked, dear Supreme Court, what are these reasons? The Supreme Court said, if these are the candidates you have chosen, you have given tickets to these candidates against whom serious criminal charges are pending, what made you choose them? What made you give them ticket over others who do not have criminal charges against them? That means if you gave ticket to person A, B and C against whom serious criminal charges are pending, why didn't you choose X, Y and Z against whom there are no criminal cases? Why did you choose them over them? Please give us the reasons. And mind you, don't tell us that these people were given tickets because of their winnability. No. Just because they are or they will be in a position to win the election, don't give us this reason. Tell us, why did you choose them over these? and publish the entire criminal history of your candidates, not only in a local newspaper, but also in a national newspaper. Not just local and national newspaper, but also your social media handles, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Now the petitioner argues that even this 2020 judgment is not being abided by, is not being followed, is not being respected. And now another contempt of court petition is filed in the Supreme Court, and this time even against Chief Election Commissioner Sunil Arora, because the petitioner argues that the Chief Election Commissioner has failed to adhere to the Supreme Court order. The petitioner argues that the entire criminal history was not published in the national newspapers during the Bihar polls, but only in local Hindi language newspaper, which means you are violating the 2020 Supreme Court judgment. And these political parties, they have also failed to give reasons justifying why did they chose these people with criminal background over those with no criminal background. Let's see what the court will rule on this matter. Now let's look at another news on page number 9 related to international relations. US President Joe Biden, he wants to close the Guantanamo Bay prison before the end of his term. This Guantanamo Bay is in Cuba. And Cuba and the United States, they are not friends. That is something that you would know. So what's the story behind this? Let me tell you that story briefly. December 1903, the United States of America established its first overseas military base inside Cuban territory. Cuba was a colony of Spain. By the year 1868, many Latin American countries, they obtained independence from Spain. Cuba fought 3 wars against Spain to liberate herself. The first, a 10-decade war or a 10 years war between 1868 to 1878. This is what is known as 10 years war. Then the second war, 1879 to 1880. This is known as the Little War. Then again, 1895 to 1898. It is this 1895 to 1898 war that is known as the Cuban War of Independence. It is in this Cuban War of Independence that United States of America intervened. There was a 6-week military campaign launched by the United States against Spain, and that campaign is known as the Splendid Little War. At the end of the Splendid Little War, the Spanish surrendered. Treaty of Paris was signed, and Cuba was handed over to United States. United States told Cuba, if you want full independence, then you would need to allow us to have or to lease a naval base. Cuba agreed, although grudgingly. But unlike most leases, this lease does not have an end date. The US military may use this site indefinitely. That is why at the end of this third war or this Cuban War of Independence, when Cuba was handed over to the United States, and then in December 1903 the first military base was established in Cuba. But this Guantanamo Bay is notorious primarily because of what happened after September 11, 9/11 attacks, when the President George W. Bush, he got terrorists arrested and then sent to Guantanamo Bay, where some human rights activists and organizations say worst human rights violations were committed. So this is the image of the Guantanamo Bay. Barack Obama, when he became the president of the United States, he also promised that I will close down Guantanamo Bay. His successor, Donald Trump, he decided to continue with Guantanamo Bay. In fact, he used his favorite word, that I will fill it with the bad guys. But now Joe Biden has said that I will close the Guantanamo Bay before the end of my term. That is what you need to understand from this newspaper article. Now let's look at another newspaper article, Nanophotonics. Hyderabad scientists manipulate tiny crystals. Now if you need to understand what is a nanometer cycle. Nanometer cycle is basically, as you would know, it's a unit of length and it is equal to 1/1000th of a meter. What is the behavior of light on this nanometer cycle? This study is what is known as nanophotonics. Let me make it little simpler for you to understand. For example, if you're using lenses, or let's say for example microscope.
What do you want to do? Because you want to focus on an object. But these lenses or microscope, these are what we call normal optical equipments, because they cannot normally focus light to nanometer scales. However, it is possible to squeeze light into nanometer scale with the help of some other technologies. So basically, what is this nanophotonics? It is basically photonics plus nanotechnology. And what is the interaction of nanometer scale objects with light, or how light behaves on this nanometer scale? This is what is known as nanophotonics. Because nanometer scale, which is a unit of length equal to 1 billionth of a meter, such a tiny spot, how light behaves on this nanometer scale, what is the behavior of nanometer scale objects with light. This study is what is known as nanophotonics. Some related stuff. This is something which was asked in your prelims 2020. Carbon nanotubes, CRTs. These are basically tubes made of carbon but with diameter typically in nanometers. So this is how questions are framed by UPSC. With reference to carbon nanotubes, consider the following statements. Number one, they can be used as carriers of drugs and antigens in human body. Yes, they can be made into artificial blood capillaries for an injured part of human body. Yes, they can be used in biochemical sensors. Yes, these carbon nanotubes are biodegradable. Yes, all these statements are correct. Now let's look at another newspaper article on page number 12, Bait, Plant and Control. January 1, 1818. Battle of Koregaon. Battle of Koregaon took place in which the soldiers of the East India Company defeated the Peshwas. A large section of the soldiers of the East India Company, they belonged to the Mahar caste. Mahars were known as untouchables then. And the Peshwas were Brahmins, the upper caste or the so-called upper caste of the society. In this Battle of Koregaon, when East India Company defeated the Peshwas, the legacy is that it is viewed as the victory of the so-called lower castes over the so-called upper castes. To commemorate this victory, a victory pillar was also commissioned at the site. And in 1927-28, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar visited the site where this victory pillar was commissioned. Every year on 1st of January, it is celebrated. This Bhima Koregaon victory is celebrated. But in the year 2018, there was violence, which also led to destruction of public property. Few individuals, two of them also lost their lives. NIA was entrusted with the responsibility of investigating this Bhima Koregaon violence. It was argued that two former judges, they instigated the protesters. Some activists also instigated the protesters, and few activists were arrested. One such activist was Rona Wilson. And now Rona Wilson, who is in jail since 2018 in connection with the Bhima Koregaon violence, he has now filed a petition in the Bombay High Court. Why? Because he wants to seek a stay on the proceedings against him and all those who are co-accused. And his petition is based on the report of Arsenal Consulting. What Arsenal Consulting, which is a digital forensic consulting company based in United States, which was hired by Rona Wilson's defense team. This Arsenal Consulting, what it has said that if Pune police arrested Rona Wilson today, 22 months before Pune police could arrest Rona Wilson's electronic devices were compromised. But now let's understand this from science and technology perspective. Let's say, for example, here is an accused. He's not a convict, he's an accused. He's accused of a crime. Now what happens? The police will also confiscate the electronic devices used by these accused. Now what the police will do? The police will also confiscate the electronic devices used by the accused. Clear? Even if you are not accused, even then your electronic devices can be confiscated by the police. They have that power, they have that authority. If they believe that somewhere, if we take your electronic device, your laptop, your desktop, your smartphone, we can somehow crack a particular crime, then the police has that power to confiscate your electronic device. And when this electronic device is seized, this is used to collect evidence. That means basically this electronic device is scanned to look for some documents, to look for some mails, to look for some other content. And when Mr. Rona Wilson's electronic devices were seized and then they were scanned, evidence was collected. What was that evidence? Some letters, some say some 10 letters were collected from the electronic device of Rona Wilson. There were some letters which were talking about the assassination of our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Modi. There was also a content on Maoist literature, a banned organization. And these letters, this Maoist literature, this was used as an evidence against this accused, on the basis of which the case was filed against Rona Wilson and others. Now, what this consulting firm, Arsenal Consulting, has done, Arsenal Consulting has obtained the forensic image of Rona Wilson's electronic devices. Now, number one, what is a forensic image? This is very important part of digital evidence. Basically, it is a bit by bit copy of any electronic device. Now, to make it simpler for you, let's say, for example, I am at home right now. I'm using a company's laptop. Now, I want a software to be installed on this computer. Now, what I do, I get in touch with the IT help desk of my organization. I ask them, please do one thing. Please install a software on my computer. What the IT help desk guy is telling me, he says, sir, please install AnyDesk software and give me the AnyDesk ID. What happens because of this? When I install AnyDesk software on my computer, I provide ID to my IT help desk individual. Then this IT help desk guy, he gets the remote access of my computer. That means he is now remotely operating my computer. He can install the software or he can rectify some problems with my computer. But this I am doing voluntarily. This I know that I am giving remote access to the person from IT help desk. What if, without you knowing it, I want to gain access, remote access to your computer? For that, Arsenal Consulting says that suspicious mails were sent to Rona Wilson. When Rona Wilson opened those mails, then what happened? NetWire got installed. What is this NetWire? NetWire is a rat. What is rat? Rat is remote access Trojan. These are important things. For example, tomorrow question can be asked in your prelims examination. NetWire, recently seen in the news, is related to, it is a remote access Trojan. So basically it is like an AnyDesk software. So when Rona Wilson clicked on these mails, this NetWire got installed, and when this NetWire got installed, the attacker got the remote access of Rona Wilson's device. And then what this rat does? Rat normally performs two things or two actions. Number one, exfiltration. Exfiltration is basically data theft. That means from this electronic device, password, sensitive information can be stolen. Or data infiltration. That means some documents can be stored on your electronic device without you knowing it. That means because of this rat, when the attacker got access to my computer, for example, what this attacker will do, he will infiltrate into my system. What he will do, he will create a hidden folder. Inside this hidden folder, because it is not visible to me, inside this hidden folder, there will be hidden files as well. And Arsenal Consulting says within these hidden folders, files were infiltrated. And these files, the police say, this is evidence against Rona Wilson. Arsenal Consulting says these files were not created and opened by Rona Wilson. One more important term that can be relevant for your prelims examination, or for that matter your mains examination as well, is NTFS system or file system. New Technology File System. Windows operating system, for example, it uses this process, New Technology File System, to store, organize and find files on a hard disk. The benefit of using this system is something called file system journaling. What does that mean? Let's say, for example, whenever a file is created by me, let's say a Word file, whenever this file is created, an identifier is associated with this file. That means object identifiers, they are assigned, so that because of these object identifiers, we can get to know when the files are added, when the files are modified, when the files are deleted. Arsenal Consulting says that these documents which were extracted by the agencies, they did not have this identifier, which means they were not created by Rona Wilson, they were not even accessed by Rona Wilson. Another interesting thing was that the MS Word version which was installed on Rona Wilson's device, it was basically 2007 version. But these files which were extracted from his device, these files, the content was written in Word 2010 or 2013 version of the Word. So from the civil services examination point of view, you need to know about new technology file system. You need to know about remote access Trojan. You need to know about NetWire. You need to know about forensic image. Now let's look at the practice questions. Number one, two essay topics. Essay topic number one, now the rule of law can only be found in books. Essay topic number two, building a 5 trillion economy. Please write these essays in 1000 to 1200 words. That is it from our newspaper analysis for today. Thank you for being with us. Have a great day.